I am Daniel Barben, currently Professor of Political Science and Future Studies at RWTH Aachen University.
I'm Ed Hackett. I'm a professor in the School of Human Evolution and Social Change.
And responsible research and innovation demands that you then ask the question of responsible to whom, for what, and by what criteria. And what the report does very well is to open up a space in which to think about this responsibility. There's a real dimensionality to it, where you talk about space, time, and a diversity of expertise all being essential to promoting the deliberation that allows responsibility to be made relevant for particular streams of research, particular innovation efforts.
Yeah, and actually, this is also some experience we share from the US, that the center in Arizona, the Center for Nanotechnology and Society, is one of the locations, or maybe the US location, in which concerns and concepts of how to do responsible research and innovations, of also having collaborative settings among social scientists, humanists, and scientists could be developed in conjunction also with new forms of public engagement. And in Europe at the same time, we had similar, although somewhat different, concerns and developments. And interestingly enough, the European Commission has taken up those concepts that mostly have emerged in the context of nanotechnology and the biosciences, and has it made, like a novel, a major category, but not with much content. And so this is still something that needs to be filled.
Yes, I think one of the ways that you fill this space, that's really quite an innovation in the report, is the way you think about values in conflict, values in tension. And there's a set of them that run as a spine in the report. And what the report does with these values in tension is recognize that the way forward is not to privilege one value over the other timelessly, but rather to recognize that you might have to oscillate between polar values at different times for different purposes and to meet the needs of different publics in different places.
Yeah.
And so that sensitivity really is an advance in thinking that this report makes.
I would like to comment on, or take this up. So in our three thematic workshops, the first one was dedicated to the diversity of European publics. Another one was on changes in and around science, dedicated to the dynamics and evaluation. And the third one on science and society issues and the scientific community. And in all those areas we discovered that there are different ways of valuing science, research and innovation, and also of valuing the promises and potential or actual outcomes of research and innovation. And we also found that often in the public and in the policy discourses, there are limited notions of what is really happening there. And that, for example, the public understanding of science has very limited notions of what is happening there, and has become also like a ritualized research practice and ritualized forms of public engagement, which really don't grapple with the complexity and also what's really at stake, and that we in a way also wanted to contribute to opening up and also enriching then the forms of valuing that are taking place.
Yes, because the challenge that you begin the report with is a challenge of innovation in a time of constrained resources. And to my way of thinking, that invites a discussion of what I call necessary and sufficient innovations, meaning specifically, which innovations are necessary now that we have not embarked upon? We may not have the knowledge or have made the investment in developing the innovation. And in which realms are our innovations currently sufficient, or innovative processes sufficient? An example might be that we may not need a new Apple cell phone available every year, but we may need strategies for adapting to climate change or mitigating climate change that require innovations that are not on the drawing board yet. And identifying the necessary innovations and partitioning them from the areas where innovation is currently sufficient is a matter of intense public deliberation that will require the diversity of publics and a variety of levels.
I think the keyword of innovation is very, very, very important because, first of all, the European Union itself is imagining itself as an innovation union, and also innovation has been a key concern of all the framework programs and also of other programs. And basically the top priority has usually been global competitiveness, contribution to economic welfare. And with regard to that, we also say that those are, of course, important concerns. But you can't reduce science and society issues to obtaining public acceptance, or to just take for granted what innovation means and what a future innovative European Union might look like, or what societal welfare across Europe and beyond might mean. And thus, we also made the proposal to broaden the notions of relevance beyond the economic criteria, and then also to broaden the key concerns with regard to science beyond excellence, to say it's also about significance, about relevance, and then how is that also balanced or can be better balanced both within scientific research in the ways or the systems in which it is assessed, and also with regard to how people who actually do the research can engage with those issues. So how you can better balance career requirements and requirements to public engagement. Because nowadays there's a clear set of priorities of how to do that or not to do that. So that it's often perceived as detrimental when scientists, especially young scientists, take part in activities that are not considered primarily as advancing their careers as scientists, meaning that they should have a more narrow view or not really take into account the broader issues that are at stake. But we would also make the claim that about a better embodiment of science and technology in society really means that you have to take into account those issues and engage with different actors across many domains of society and also at very different levels. And thus the policy making, decision making also starts with the scientists asking about what are challenges in my research, what might it mean there, responsible to make responsible decisions up to the funding and regulatory organizations.
Yeah, in that regard, the report's thinking is both very new and very old. What I'm reminded of is the Aristotelian tripod in the Nicomachean Ethics, when he's advising his son about the virtues of a good life. The three principal values that he instructs his son to honor are episteme, or the pursuit of knowledge, techne, or the pursuit of new technologies, new ways of doing things, and the one we often forget, phronesis, or the principles that guide right conduct in a particular situation. And it is this tripod upon which rests the creation of new knowledge and innovation for a society. And the report calls attention to the deficiency in phronesis, in the situational right conduct. And it proposes a remedy that works from the scale of the individual investigator, the scientist or engineer, acquiring a sense of right conduct, up to a level of organized deliberation that then in a way brings society into science and into technology, as much as bringing science and technology into engagement with society. So it really is a strong framework for a forward-looking process of revitalizing the science and innovation enterprise.
So this has been a primarily European undertaking with the colleagues involved, and so from your perspective, which at the same time is an insider's perspective, because many of these issues that we talk about are very similar in the United States, but some are different. So what from your perspective would you see is distinctly European what would an American academic or citizen, public official see differently? And lastly, where would you also maybe go beyond in the suggestions of what we have suggested when you called that we also have been a bit traditional in the statements we made here or there?
Well, it's a brilliant framework, and the way forward will depend upon how it is enacted, and whether, for example, the training of scientists pays more attention to the ethics, values, the humanistic dimensions of science and engineering in concert with the technical and scientific. Similarly, whether the level of engagement at these higher organizations within a community and within a nation is done in an effective way. Secondly, what I'm impressed with, and I think this is the distinctively European element, is that it is a transnational approach. So that when I look at the founding documents of, for example, the United States National Science Foundation, it's very much a national focus to promote national interests of one sort and another, health, well-being, security, and not thinking in the larger scale that the traditional scientific societies thought. If you look back at the foundational scientific societies of the early 17th century, they were not nationalistic in their orientation, but really remarkably global and humanistic. I'm thinking about the Accademia del Lince, for example, in Rome. And I think that this could bring debate back to that. I think, thirdly, there's an agility that this framework calls for. The agile assessment of the different values that are in tension and the agile choice to emphasize one value or another in a particular circumstance. I think that it's a way of moving forward on this front that is more advanced than the level of thinking in other parts of the world today. I think where the focus gets to be more narrowly on economic competitiveness or national security.
Thanks, Ed. These are very kind comments. And also in our process, it was indeed an experience of us to stumble across the diversity over and over again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that these days doing research in Europe, if you go beyond maybe your university or your country, then you pretty quickly come across issues of divergence, of different, cultures and sensibilities of thinking, of dealing with things, of institutional rationalities, of priorities, also of dynamics, even sometimes weird temporal dynamics, that you might have heated debates in one place but not in another about very different issues. That when you look at Europe, then often you have the concerns of certain actors of certain countries more in view than those of others. And what we really try to do is to broaden that as well, because as you know, the European Union has been enlarged considerably in the past couple of years, and it's also been extended beyond the so-called core countries. And so, but in addition to that, with regard to the multi-sidedness and the multi-level governance of science, we also thought that we really need to be very careful in trying to take into account the specificity of contexts, of times, of spaces, of institutions, of cultures, of actors, and also try to find ways of both analyzing it in an interesting, appropriate way, and also then dealing with them in equally appropriate political, institutional, etc. Ways.
Yes, absolutely. There are universal principles that need to be respected in every context, and then there are community-specific or time-specific values that need to be honored in at other times and places. And the challenge is to tell the difference, to know when to honor the universal and when it's time for the particular.